Welcome to the Monsters and Mangos podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 9, the Tehran UFO Incident.
Yes, this is a really fascinating one we're diving into today. It's got all those elements, doesn't it? Credible people, seeing things, weird tech failures, government interests.
Exactly. We're talking September 19th, 1976, early morning hours over Tehran, Iran.
Right. And it kicks off with multiple ordinary people, civilians, looking up and reporting this shining object, something unusual enough that they felt they had to report it.
And that's what triggers the military response, leading to these, frankly, bizarre encounters between Iranian Air Force pilots and F-4 Phantoms and, well, whatever this thing was.
Encounters that are really hard to just brush off.
So our goal for this deep dive is really to get into what those pilots actually experienced, the strange electronic problems they reported, and the fact that this definitely got the attention of U.S. intelligence. We want to focus on the stuff that makes you go, the credibility, the mystery, the tension.
It all started on the ground, didn't it? At least 4 separate reports from civilians seeing this bright, luminous thing just hanging there over Tehran.
Not just a quick flash, but something substantial enough to make people pick up the phone.
Precisely. Which leads to the Air Force scrambling the first F-4 Phantom. Lieutenant Yadi Nazari was the pilot.
Okay, so Nazari and his weapons officer head towards Tehran. What happens then?
Well, as they get close, the pilot radios in a complete failure. Instruments dead, communications gone, total blackout in the cockpit, electronically speaking.
Wow, just silence. While chasing an unknown object.
Can you imagine? In a high-performance jet at night, it's deeply unsettling.
And then, just as strangely, it all comes back.
That's what Nazari reported, yes. As soon as they broke off the approach, turned back towards base, bang, everything springs back to life. Instruments, radio, all normal.
Like flipping a switch. It almost suggests some kind of localized effect, right? Tied to proximity to the object.
It certainly points that way. A very, very strange first encounter, but they weren't done yet.
No, they sent up another F-4, this time with more senior guys.
That's right. Major Pervez Jafari, a squadron commander, no less, with First Lieutenant Jalal Demirian in the backseat. Their experience, well, it ramps things up considerably.
Jafari actually managed to get a radar lock on it.
He did.
Yeah.
Locked on at 27 nautical miles, which is, about 50 kilometers? And based on the return, he estimated its size was comparable to a Boeing KC-135 tanker. So, this wasn't small.
Not a weather balloon then.
Definitely not. And his visual description is striking. He said it was flashing with intense red, green, orange, and blue lights. So bright, he couldn't actually see the object's body behind the glare.
Like looking into a spotlight. And did he have the same electronic issues as the first jet?
He did, yeah. As he closed in, his communication system just cut out. Dead air again.
Okay, pattern emerging. But Jafari tried to do more, didn't he? He tried to engage.
He went further. He attempted to arm an AM-9 Sidewinder missile. Think about that preparing to fire on this unknown object. The weapon system failed. Completely offline. Couldn't arm it, couldn't fire. And just like before, the systems only returned to normal after he increased his distance from the object.
This is getting seriously weird. That pattern of interference, it's just so specific.
It really is. But hold on, because it gets even stranger. Jafari then reported something else.
Well,
He said a second object detached from the main one. He described it as round and said it came straight toward me at a high rate of speed, almost as if it were a missile.
whoa. Okay, now we're talking about potentially hostile action. What did he do?
He tried to react to defend himself, but same story. He reported, suddenly nothing was working, the weapons control panel was out, and I lost all the instruments and the radio.
Yeah.
Again, total system failure at the absolute worst moment.
Unbelievable. Just powerless up there.
Control tower told him to break off, return to base. But even as he was heading back...
He saw something else.
Yeah, he saw the main object, which he described as diamond-shaped by this point, still up there, and then another bright object detached from it and headed straight down, towards the ground.
Like it was crashing.
That's what he expected. An explosion, debris, but nothing. He claimed it seemed to slow down and land gently, radiating this intense bright light from the spot.
Land gently. An aircraft-sized object. And they checked it out.
They did. Jafari and Demirian flew a helicopter out to that area the next day, found nothing. No wreckage, no scorch marks, no physical evidence of a landing.
But what about people nearby? Did anyone else notice anything?
Interestingly, yes, some residents in the vicinity did report hearing a loud noise and seeing a bright flash of light during that night. It sort of corroborates part of Jafari's account, even if there was no physical trace left.
So no smoking gun on the ground, but testimony matching the timing. And all of this was reported up the chain, right? Even to the U.S.
Oh, yeah. This wasn't just kept quiet. A report detailing these events was sent to the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, like the same day. That tells you something about how seriously this was taken, at least initially.
That immediate high-level reporting definitely adds weight, doesn't it? It wasn't just dismissed as a glitch or pilot imagination.
Absolutely. The fact that U.S. intelligence was looped in so quickly is a key part of this whole mystery.
Okay, so that's the incredible story from the pilot's perspective. But inevitably, there are skeptical analyses. What are the counterarguments here?
Well, you have figures like Philip Klass and James Oberg. Their starting point is often the initial sighting. They suggest the bright object everyone first saw might have just been an astronomical body. Jupiter was apparently quite bright and visible then.
Okay, maybe for the initial ground sightings, perhaps. But Jupiter doesn't cause F4 phantoms to lose all their electronics when they get close, does it?
That's the tricky part for the simple astronomical explanation, yes. Glass tried to address the equipment failures. He pointed to a statement from a Westinghouse technician involved with the F4 systems.
And what did the technician say?
He claimed only the first F4, Naziri's plane, actually reported failures. And, crucially, that specific aircraft apparently had a known history of electrical issues. It had even been in for repairs recently for that very reason.
Okay. So maybe the first incident was just a faulty plane. What about Jafari's plane, the second one?
Klass also brought up an opinion from a McDonnell Douglas repair supervisor. The suggestion was that the radar system on the F4 could have been in manual track mode.
Manual track, what does that mean?
It means the pilot is essentially steering the radar beam by hand rather than letting it lock on automatically. The argument is that this mode is more susceptible to misinterpreting brief or faint radar returns, especially if the pilot is stressed or tired. Maybe they weren't locking on to a solid object after all.
So the skeptical take is, first plane was faulty, second pilot maybe misread the radar under pressure, and maybe everyone was tired and rattled.
That's basically the gist, yeah. Martin Bridgestock summarized this view. One plane with known electrical gremlins, potentially tired air crews, maybe misidentifying things in the sky. Klass also added that radio problems on aircraft aren't exactly unheard of, though the focus here is really the F4s.
Right. What about the other things Jafari saw? The objects detaching and heading down.
Brian Dunning offered an explanation for that. He pointed out that September 1976 happened to be during the peak of a couple of meteor showers, the Gamma Pisids and Southern Pisids, plus another one active.
So just meteors, falling stars.
His point was that seeing bright streaks of light falling from the sky wouldn't have been unusual around that time. Perhaps Jafari saw meteors and, given the context of the main object, interpreted them as something more.
And the landing site, where Jafari thought the second object touched down gently.
Dunning mentioned an investigation by a Colonel Mouet. Apparently, when they investigated that location, they found a beeping transponder signal, but it wasn't anything exotic. It was traced back to a standard C-141 transport aircraft, just indicating normal air traffic in the area.
Okay, so maybe the landing light was misinterpreted or perhaps related to something entirely mundane nearby.
Yeah, the skeptical view boils down to a series of coincidences and misinterpretations. Misidentified planet, faulty equipment on one plane, potential radar misreading on the second, meteors seen during a known shower, and maybe some unrelated ground phenomena or signals.
Dunning's conclusion was basically, planes chase things sometimes and planes have technical issues sometimes. Seeing both happen together isn't necessarily proof of aliens.
Pretty much. He argued the only really unusual thing was the combination of events, but that each individual component wasn't that strange on its own. He also criticized, the tendency in UFO circles to jump straight to an alien explanation.
Right, the MIGI newsletter thing often gets brought up by UF proponents, doesn't it? Something about jamming.
Yes, an editorial in a U.S. Air Force Security Services quarterly called MIGI. Skeptics like Dunning tend to view that piece as more of a dramatic retelling of the known incident details rather than presenting solid new evidence of deliberate electronic jamming by an unknown entity.
Okay, so we're left with this stark contrast. On one hand, you've got these detailed, dramatic accounts from experienced military pilots, multiple system failures on advanced jets, close encounters with a maneuvering bright object, things detaching, and clear U.S. intelligence interest right away.
That's the core of it. The consistency between the pilots, the specific nature of the electronic failures happening sequentially, the visual descriptions. It's compelling stuff.
And on the other hand, you have these attempts to explain it all away piece by piece. Jupiter, a faulty plane, meteors, maybe pilot error and under stress. Logical points, but do they fully capture the simultaneous weirdness reported by two separate crews?
That's the lingering question, isn't it? Can all those reported phenomena, the simultaneous failures, the maneuvering objects, the secondary deployment, truly be explained by that collection of mundane possibilities? Or does something genuinely unexplained remain?
Which really brings it back to you listening to this. When you weigh the pilot testimonies, the very specific electronic interference across multiple systems and aircraft, against the skeptical explanations, does the possibility of something truly extraordinary happening over Tehran that night still feel plausible? What do you make of the Tehran UFO incident?
It definitely remains one of the most debated and intriguing cases out there. Lots to think about.
That's the end of the episode. Until next time, keep to the shadows. Some legends are best left undiscovered.